Hello, everyone. This is Ekatrina with Trust Me Mom. And my guest today is Kenny Weiss. He's an emotional authenticity coach and he's a founder of the Greatness University. Many of you probably heard of him and read his books. He's well known in personal coaching and wellness space. And today I am so honored and I'm so excited that I get to talk to Kenny and ask a few questions about parenting.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. So, Kenny, you have a very powerful story. And I really appreciate how in some of your videos you share some of the examples from your childhood or challenges you faced in your adult life.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about your overall journey and what put you on the path of healing and helping other people?
Well, we might need about 12 hours to fill that out. Let's see if I can give you the Cliff Notes version. But my parents were 16 and 18 when they were married, 21 and 23 with 4 kids. So our house was kind of chaotic. But just like all parents, we're not taught how to be a parent. And it's a very small percentage of parents who really choose not to be kind to their children. It's my experience, every parent has the best intentions, but it's a huge job. And I find it fascinating. The two things that matter the most in life, relationships and parenting, we don't learn a dang thing about them. We don't go take a class or any of that. So, we're all going to make mistakes. And even if we had teachers following us around all day, every day, we'd still make mistakes because we're human. But my parents had tough childhoods also, and my dad was beat to death as a kid. He never hit us, but he was filled with a lot of anger and was very detached emotionally. And my mom ended up becoming an alcoholic. And I talk about, how I discovered that. I was just 10 years old, woke up in the middle of the night just to use the restroom, and there she was, passed out naked on the toilet. And that's the day, like I remember, it was like Star Trek. I remember it starting in my feet and this buzzing, like being transported in Star Trek. And I just remember screaming, I'm dying, I'm dying. And I felt whoever I was up to that point left me. And that's kind of what happens with trauma. And trauma doesn't always have to be that severe. It's just little things. Like I tell stories of how my dad rolled his eyes. And so all my life, while I was asking for help with homework. So I've always felt like I was stupid. That's how trauma happens. Just little subtle things, or asking my dad to play with me and he was too busy. And so you feel less than, you don't feel worth his time and attention. And so because of my parents' perfect imperfections, my life was a struggle. I, had many addictions because all addiction is just an attempt to soothe intolerable childhood pain that's never been reconciled. I ended up playing 2 pro sports I see now. I never wanted to play either of them. I went through 2 really difficult divorces. The first marriage, I was both physically and verbally and emotionally abused. A horrific child custody battle, bankruptcy, and finally spent 3 days contemplating, taking my life. And in the background of all of this, I was always fascinated by psychology. I saw my first counselor, I think, at the age of 21, even though, especially back then, we had just, Oprah and Phil Donahue, all the TV talk shows had just started. So society had started to open the door that it's okay to talk about childhood, parenting, relationships, feelings, things like that. But I knew I was a mess. I just had an instinct about it. And so I was always researching and trying to get help. But it wasn't until the end of that first marriage, as I found out, the difficulty with therapists, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists is they go to school and learn how to diagnose and prescribe medication. Basically, they're not taught how to heal. That's not what they learn in school. And as that's why I wasn't getting, very much help through all the counselors I ran into. But I finally ran into one who did a ton of work outside of what he learned in school. And that's the secret, is you need to find somebody who's learned the healing process. And I did. And I was 38 at the time, and that first appointment, I told him a little bit about my childhood and about the marriage, and I just summed it up with, Mike, I don't know how to be a man. And I didn't. My childhood taught me. My dad told me this just before he died. He said, Kenny, of all the kids, you were the easiest. And what my dad meant by that, he meant a compliment. Because he doesn't know about all this stuff, what he didn't realize he was saying was, Kenny, you figured out that the only way to survive in our household was to have no morals and values, no needs and wants, no voice, to be completely neglected, abandoned, invisible, so that you didn't create stress for us. And so that's why I didn't know how to be a man. I was an empty shell. That's why I ended up with someone who was abusive. Like, you don't end up with an abusive partner unless your childhood was difficult. And that's how attraction works. And so I really started to learn how to grow up and how to be a person and an adult starting at 38. And, once he said that to me, it was kind of like a bookshelf fell. And then he said, Kenny, when I was in your shoes, I went and became an expert. And that phrase clicked. And from that moment on, if he suggested a book, a class, I took it. And I found out I kind of had an aptitude for it, because I would see him on Thursdays. Monday nights, I'd go to group, which was run by another counselor in the office. And I'd come in to see him, my counselor, on Thursdays, and he'd go, I heard about you. And I'm like, what? And one of the gifts, that's the one thing everyone's like afraid to admit they went through childhood trauma. Childhood trauma gives us tremendous skills and talents. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, and parents get upset at the thought of, oh, I've hurt my kids. We're all going to hurt our kids. And if you do the work, instead of using the pain they experienced against ourselves, we learn to extract the gifts from it. And that's what started happening when I was working with Mike. And so I'd only been seeing him a couple months. And I came into an appointment and he said to me, Kenny, you have a gift. You need to do this work. Thank God I didn't do it back then, because I still had more to face and heal. But that's what opened the door. And it was over the next 10, 12 years. And then really at the end of my second divorce, when I was contemplating taking my life, where I knew from that day I saw Mike that there was this hill, and if I could just get to the other side. And over a 10-year period, I saw Mike, I figured out it's probably once a week for 7.5 of those years. I took breaks, but I worked my tail off, but I just couldn't get over the other side. And I needed that second marriage. I needed that to drive me to the breaking point. And that's when things changed, because I realized there was one part of my recovery I was never willing to go. One of the gifts my childhood gave me is, because it was so chaotic, because there's so much deception and it was never safe, I had an ability to see what was going on before it happened. So I always lived my life out front of me, trying to control it to keep myself safe. And I realized that's what was killing me. And I had to let that go. And so I spent those 3 days contemplating my life, and I went to write my kids a note. And it was easy to write about how much pain I was in, but when I went to write about why it was the best decision for everybody, for me not to live, I knew too much psychology at that point. Every sentence, I'm like, well, that's denial, that's projection, that's codependent. Like, I couldn't outshrink myself. And that's when I realized I had to let go of that control piece. And so that night, I'll never forget, I was walking into my bedroom and just crying, and I'm going, tomorrow I have to wake up and not know what to do. And that was petrifying to me. And so the next morning I woke up and just started crying right away, and just walked out to the end of my hall, and I just stood there. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have a single thought. Everything was just blank and quiet. And I just stood there crying for about 10, 12 minutes. And then I heard a voice go, sit on the couch. So I did. And then Another 18, 20 minutes, I heard walk to the gym. And what I learned was what I now teach. Over the next year or two, I just went through this. I've heard people talk about spiritual processes. I don't know if that's what I went through. All I know is over the next 2 years, I just had epiphany after epiphany about how all of this works. And that became my first book. And that's when I realized, oh my God, Mike's message. Yeah, wow. This is who I was meant to be. All the other stuff were trauma adaptations. And I finally learned how to use my gifts for me instead of against me. And in the process, I've figured out some things that I haven't heard other people talk about that have been very helpful to me. And from what my clients say, it's been very helpful to them. So there's kind of a small version of how I got here.
Yes, and it's a very powerful story. You definitely went through so much. It feels like
Yeah.
every master was once a disaster. And
Yeah.
the more pain you can endure, the more you can help others in the future and have that empathy and understanding. So thank you for sharing that story. And
You're welcome.
also, it seems like a lot of parents will say, I'll die for my kid, but
Mhm.
will you heal for your kid?
Ah, beautifully said. Yeah, a parent who says I'll die for my kids, that's a red flag. That's usually a sign of codependence and enmeshment. They're too emotionally attached to their children. Their value and worth is wrapped up in their child, and you don't want a child. Think of that. I'll die for my kids. A child feels that burden that I have to keep you alive, so I feel safe within myself as the parent. That's what the child feels. Now, I know the parent, again, we're not taught. The parent's intent is genuine. What they're hoping is to express how much they love their child. But again, we're not taught how to express it. We express our love in a way that works against us, not for us. And so that parent is working against themselves and their child when they're that obsessed with their child. That's a that's a deep need inside of them, a hole they haven't filled, and now they're using their child to try and fill it. Well, that's a massive burden for any child to carry, and that's what creates a lot of a child's struggles later in life is how much the parent needs them. And so again, the intent is genuine. The execution of that intent is where the problem lies because we're not taught the healthy way to express that in a way that's not hurtful to our children.
Right. And maybe we can look at some healthy ways of expressing it.
Yeah.
One of the stories from your interviews that really impressed me was the cottage cheese that
Oh,
the dog comes before you.
yeah.
Can you share that story and how probably
Sure.
your mom didn't mean that, but as a
Uh,
kid, that's how you internalized it?
yeah, this is, an example of what most people, psychologists, most people wouldn't even consider childhood trauma. And this is the mistake that most professionals make is um, the subtleties of the emotional things we go through. And so I was just reaching in the refrigerator to grab cottage cheese. I was hungry, and my mom comes running over screaming, no, 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 that's for the dogs. Now, what she meant was she was on a food budget. Now, my mom had a spending problem too. She'd buy herself a lot of clothes, kind of where I got my passion for the way I dress is. And so money was tight. Also, my dad, we were, four athletes. We ate like horses. So it was tough. My dad was so young. He's trying to, keep a roof over our head, feed us, all that stuff. There are a lot of financial pressures. But also, my mom just used the cottage cheese to hide the dog's pills when they were sick. So that was her intent. But again, the execution of that intent was less than perfect. And so what I heard, and this is what children do, what I heard was, oh, if I eat, I get in trouble. If I eat, mom doesn't love me. And oh, by the way, in this house, we feed the dogs before we feed the kids. And so I spent most of my life starving myself. This is what kids do. Like people think, oh, this is my personality. I'm an athlete. I like this. I like that. That's the problem. I write about this in my recent book. We're all detached from our authentic selves. We've all created false personas and adaptations because of simple moments like that. So we think we know who we are, but we don't. And so I starved myself for years. People would ask me to go eat. I'm like, oh, I hate eating. It bores me. I figured out a strategy so I would be the easiest child. Oh, if I don't eat, mom will love me. I'll get placed above the dogs. That's one of the ways I became easy. I didn't complain about how I was starving. Everyone else did. And so I grew into adulthood. I would hardly ever eat. I played pro hockey. I'm living off super big gulps and ding dongs. I wouldn't eat. And so I thought that's who I was, a person who didn't like food. No, I was a person who had experienced a less than perfect parenting moment and figured out a solution that allowed me to get some sort of connection with my parents and stay out of trouble. And that's what every child does over the simplest thing that, my mom's intent was perfect. Her execution was perfectly imperfect. And that's why all of us struggle as adults, whether it's relationships, careers, health issues, it all can be traced back to little moments like that.
Yes. So if we could play it back and if you could change how it all unfolded, what would be the right way for your mom to communicate the message to you?
Well, in a situation be like that, be, oh, sweetie, hold on a second. Let me explain something to you. I know you're hungry and I love that you want to eat something, but I'm using the cottage cheese to hide the dog's pills. So let's find you something else you can eat. So in other
Mm-hmm.
words, it's an explanation of what's going on. Do you hear there's a recognition that it's okay that you eat? It's okay that you're hungry. There's not a problem here. So in other words, parents always have life stresses. And no parent will be able to do this, but the goal in parenting is to be able to take your own emotional pain and stress, put it on the shelf, and be what's called attuned, totally attuned to your child's emotional needs. And that example that I just gave of how to do that was she's stressed out about money, she's stressed out about the food, but all these different things, but she's able to put that away. And so your comment earlier, if you if a parent wants to die for their child, no, the single greatest thing you can do as a parent for your child is to do the work on your own childhood trauma. I get parents call me all the time, can you help me with my kid? And I always, very politely ask, what if we discovered there might be some things you could do that might be helpful? Would you be willing to participate? And if they say no, then I won't take them on as a client because I already know whatever's going on in the child, they're just acting out the emotional dysregulation of the parent. And so if a parent's not willing to look at themselves and deal with their own emotional perfect imperfections, I can't help their child because they're just mirroring, because that's what happens with children. They have no boundaries. So whatever emotions the parents have, they just go right into the child. You can't hide them. You can't hide behind a face or any of that. It's not how emotions work. They just all get dumped right into our child. So our child's emotional dysregulation is just a mirror into our own. So the greatest help, if you want, as you said, if you want to die for your child, the way to do that is die to yourself and go heal yourself.
Yes. And actually, as I was listening to your story, it feels like your whole world and personality died a few times.
Yeah,
And it's such a
constantly.
painful process.
Yeah, that's all life is. I mean, life is filled with like I talk about this in my latest book. Every single choice we make, relationships, careers, hobbies, whatever it is we're doing, every conversation we're having, all we're ever doing in life is driving ourselves towards the pain that's keeping us from rediscovering our authenticity, our authentic selves. because we're always masquerading, whether we are in truth about that or not. And so we're actively pursuing pain in our life. And the goal of that pain is an opportunity to confront ourselves and see the truth about ourselves, face it, and heal it. Now, the sad part is people don't know that. So they blame the other person, they take the victim role, whatever, and they just stay stuck and they repeat the pain against themselves over and over. But if you realize, wait a minute, that's what I was able to see as I looked at every choice in my life. I'm like, well, no wonder I chose that. That got me to learn this about me, and that led to this and this. Now, the only reason I was able to figure that out is my fascination with how all of this worked. You know, that's the gift of my trauma. I was trying to always figure out, how can I not be a problem to my parents? So I was paying attention to body language, tone, like every subtle thing. So what was killing me became my gift. It helped me figure out how all of this process works. And so I know that whatever a person's tragedies in life are, they're gifts. They're driving themselves towards the solution to reclaiming themselves and healing themselves. They just don't know the process. Well, that's what my classes, my books, my coaching teaches a person. Here's how you look at that. You're looking at your life experience incorrectly. It's like this. You ever watch a 3D movie without the glasses?
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, but it's distorted and everything, but you can kind of see shapes. You kind of know what's going on because you've seen movies in the past. You have a basic idea of what's happening. Well, that's how everyone lives their life. They've seen movies and their friends and other people live their life. So nothing really makes sense, but they kind of make sense of it. Well, everything I teach, write about, my classes are the glasses. When you have this information, you go, oh my God, I see it now. Now I understand what he's saying. Now I see how I chose this bad relationship, career, whatever, because actually I was trying to tell myself what I needed to heal in myself. And once I get into truth, take responsibility, do the healing work, then I can forgive myself and the other person. And that's what I call the authentic self cycle, is how we reclaim ourselves. But we need to know that's what we're doing. So yes, we're constantly driving ourselves towards reclaiming ourselves.
Yes, and it's a painful process. And sometimes I even wonder, why do we need all these lessons, in the sense that it's very painful? If we compare life to a computer game, and there's some really violent, like Halo, right? In Europe,
Yeah.
maybe that's a person in Gaza in some really dangerous war situation. Others are in a more kind of peaceful environment. But in many cases, when you play a game, you know you're totally safe. Always, it's more like entertainment. Oh, if you were killed by an angry mob, that's fine. But in life, it feels so real, so painful. And for many people, going through divorce, losing a loved ones, having a health challenge, or even a lot of my parents in my audience, they have special needs kids where they really struggle. They did not think that the child will not be able to walk, and now they're becoming a caregiver for them. So it feels so tough. And I agree with you, there is a gift in it. But then for many people, it's very hard to see. Or even you had those darkest moments where
Mm-hmm.
you felt like, it's the end. I don't want to live anymore. So can you give a little bit more hope and kind of a
Yeah.
inspiration?
Well, the reason that happens, you're right. For most of us, pain becomes the motivator. It doesn't have to be that way. Like my first book lays that out. The only reason that we self-destruct is because we haven't taught emotional authenticity. For centuries, we've suppressed emotions, said they're bad and wrong. Yet every single thought you have, every single decision you make starts with an emotion. It's a feeling. Everything you do is emotion-based. And I find it fascinating. We've known this for, over 20 years now, even longer, and nobody's teaching it. Everyone's still trying to tell people to think different. It's like, it's a complete waste of time, because whatever thought you have, it's all based on what your emotional experience has been. And those are all cataloged in childhood. And so all you're doing is reliving that. And, and then, parents don't realize that, during pregnancy, what you go through The emotions you experience actually alters the DNA of a child. Like, all of this is emotion based. So the reason right now that we self-destruct is because we haven't taught that you don't have to do that to change. But if you don't know the emotional authenticity process, that's your only option. So the hope is for people is you're going to have to fight against that emotion that comes up that says, oh, I don't want to deal with my emotions. Oh, emotions are silly. Emotions make me weak. Well, do you hear the tone in that? That's an emotion. Do you see how your emotion is driving that? Well, who sent you the message that our emotions are bad? And so that's ultimately where you learn to self-destruct. So you'd have to make the choice, you know what? I'm done. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I keep doing it this way and it's not working. So maybe I ought to give this emotion thing a try. And so what I've learned is I don't mind when most people, what happens in my life now that people would classify as bad, I love. It's not upsetting to me because I know when so-called bad things happen, this is the gift. This is where the solution lies. Well, how did I get to that place? Because I learned to stop self-destructing with the pain from the past. And so that's the hope. It's, unfortunately, there's no magic pill you can get from a doctor. You're going to have to do the work. That's the stumbling block is people just, oh, I don't want to go spend time on this. Well, if you choose that, you'll stay where you are. But if you're sick and tired of being where you are, the hope is if you go do the work and go become an expert, like my counselor said to me, if you go become an expert in emotional authenticity and learn how your emotions are driving every aspect of your life, then yes, you'll be able to navigate these so-called sad things. It's not that you won't feel sadness, but your relationship with that sadness, it won't, like for most people without this, it's debilitating. It shuts them down. It's excruciating. When you do this work, you experience what's called joy pain. So in the midst of the most horrific moments, you feel this overwhelming sense of joy. It's a release. It's exciting. It's not, everyone out there, when you don't have emotional authenticity, you're doing everything you can to avoid any type of negative emotion. When you learn this process, the opposite happens. You allow the negative emotion or experience to happen, and in the midst of it, you feel tremendous excitement and joy because you know the solution that lies in it. You can see it now. That's the hope. To
Yes,
get that
that's
hope, you have to learn the skills and tools.
right. And can we touch briefly on pain and how a lot of diseases are actually driven by emotion? You have a lot of
Yeah.
content about that and even your personal story with the back pain.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. I realized my emotions were running my health even before I knew any of this stuff. That story, I think I tell in my first book of once I discovered my mom was an alcoholic, I was in and out of the hospitals. Um, I was sick nonstop. I had, stomach problems and back problems. And the last time my back went out, I was in the garage and I just collapsed and I was screaming for my mom to help me because my crutches were up in the rafters. And I'm going to swear here, I apologize, but this is exactly what I said. Um, I screamed out to her, I said, you selfish son of a bitch, when are you going to stay sober long enough to take care of me? And I went ice cold in that moment. I got hit with a realization of, oh my God, this is the first time I've been sick or hurt since I found out she was an alcoholic and she can't take care of me. And in that moment, I realized I had been sick and hurt that whole time because if I was, she wouldn't drink. She'd take care of me. And so that's what I've seen with every client. And it's been proven too, the science is now out, even the CDC, 85 to 95% of all illness and disease is stress related. Well, what's stress? I love how the medical community, because all they want to do is push medication, they hide the true nature of what's going on. If you look at the clinical definition of stress, they're describing fear. You're scared to death. You're in massive fear. Well, what's driving the majority of illness and disease is an emotional problem. And that's true for everybody. I tell stories of the woman with cancer came into my office after she'd just been diagnosed. And I asked her to tell me a little bit about what's going on and what's going on at home. And she was very frustrated with both her husband and her kids. And there's, she'd ask for their support and wouldn't get it. I'm like, so when that happens, where do you feel that? She said, here. I asked her somewhere between 19 and 23 questions, all about her kids. And so where do you feel that? Here. Where do you feel it? Here. She just kept doing it because I know people don't like to hear that emotions make us sick. And so I know you really have to prove it to them. And so she kept doing this. And finally, I asked her after the 20 some odd time, I said, where's your cancer? And she just collapsed right here. Well, as soon as we started dealing, she had to learn how to say no. She had to learn how she gave herself away in childhood to her parents and was a people pleaser. As soon as we started dealing with all of that, her oncologist is like, what's going on? The cancer was shrinking and going away because she was dealing with the underlying emotional conditions. And I've seen that over and over with countless clients who come to me with health conditions. They're suppressing childhood pain, current pain. And as soon as we address that, it goes away. And that's been, every time I get sick or hurt, I can always tie it into what's going on with me emotionally. I've never seen it not be that.
So when I think about spine, it's almost a foundation, kind of that. What did it mean to you personally when your back was hurting?
I was carrying the emotional weight for the family. My job was to be the emotional surrogate spouse for both my mom and dad. My mom did what's called enmeshment.
Mm-hmm.
She overly attached to me. She was a mother who would die for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my father, he would dump all of his anger and frustration. I just sit and listen. And so I was carrying the weight of that. Plus I carried by starving myself. And then when we'd go get new equipment, I got the least. I always made sure I got the least. So I was also carrying the financial burden for the family. So I was carrying all the deepest burdens in the family. Well, where do you carry things? On your back.
Mm-hmm.
So no wonder it was in my back, So,
Yes. And
and you
then,
can see everything, injuries, even injuries, you think are random. No, it all ties into, fears and things you're afraid of dealing with or are not dealing with.
a lot of people have allergies and suffer with cough. I'm actually one of them, and I've seen so many doctors, and they all cannot come up. They give me all this medication, and it's not really helping. And I'm confident it's related to some kind of emotional challenge,
Would,
but it's such a widespread condition. What do people suppress? What kind of trauma they hold?
so allergies and coughing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you cough, what part of your body are you using?
Well, it's kind of up here, and it's
Uh-huh.
very random. I
Yeah.
cannot predict when that incident is going to happen.
What is the most important aspect of your throat and your lungs? What are they used for the most in life?
Well, some of it is talking, right?
Ah,
I'm not saying
so if
something.
you're
Yeah.
coughing,
Yeah.
where are you not speaking
Mm-hmm.
your truth? Where are you withholding what you really want to say? Look through your life and your relationships, family, friends, wherever. Somewhere you're not using your voice. And the cough is I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get it out, but I'm
Yeah.
afraid to get it out. I'm afraid to say it. And it can also be to ourselves. So a lot of people struggle is they have a hard time saying no to others, but they have even a harder time saying no to themselves. So a lot of their adaptations, the ways they sabotage themselves, they're not saying no to themselves. They're not speaking to themselves and going, hey, we're killing ourselves here. We need to stop. We need to love ourselves. So it can be we're not speaking to others about our truth, but we're also not speaking truth to ourselves. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what the cough signifies. Allergies, same thing. What behavior are you allergic to that you're pursuing? What
Mm-hmm.
belief system, what feeling, what is it you're not addressing in your life emotionally that you're allergic to?
Yes. Can you walk me and my listeners through your process when you faced bankruptcy, those mini deaths where you may even think, well, if I'm fully authentic, I cannot even survive in this society. It's a really cruel society. We need to play by the rules. And how can I be fully authentic? And clearly, you were able to recover and build a wonderful career. And hopefully, you're in a much better alignment now. So, can you guide us through your personal journey of that recovery and discovering faith again in
Yeah.
what you're going to pursue?
What I discovered and what I've seen with the clients who've chosen to go through the full process and you get to the other side, when you get into truth and you face all your self-deception and denial and you see you are the author of your own self-destruction, it's nobody else. When you can admit that and forgive yourself for it, you don't care who knows your story because you realize, oh, we're all a mess.
Yeah.
Like everybody's a mess. Like you could bring whoever you think is the most accomplished person who has it all together. In a couple questions, I can show you they're just as dysfunctional as I am. And so you're like, who cares? So that's why I mean I'm open with my imperfections for two reasons. One, to remind myself that I have value and worth. That neither like people will hold me in esteem for playing sports or my career and then look down on me for my addictions and whatever. Neither one is better than the other or worse than the other. Both have value and worth. Like, you know, when you're out of your value and worth, if you're feeling less than or better than. And that's what you discover is I'm just okay the way I am. Now, I still have days where I'm miserable just like I was 40 years ago. The difference is I'm like, oh, I'm in one of those days. Well, I'm human, I'm limited. No matter how much recovery I have, some days I'm going to be miserable. Who cares? It'll just ride it out. It's just part of life. You learn to accept it and you don't have to fight everything. It's just okay. Um, You learn to be okay with not everything being okay. That's the difference. Before that, you're always trying to make sure everything's okay so that nothing isn't okay. And that's death. That means somewhere you're in deception. You won't accept the truth of you're trying to control things. You won't accept reality as it is. Well, that's what recovery gives you. And so, the second reason I share my story is it can sound like I'm talking down to people. And so the reason I'm so vulnerable is for people to recognize, look, I'm still a mess. I still have days where I'm a mess, and that's okay. What I'm trying to do is give people permission because most people are filled with shame. They don't want anyone to know that they made mistakes as parents or made mistakes in their life or have addictions or have these deep, dark secrets. And that's what's killing them. The answer's in the opposite. You need to go right at that. Go become an expert in it, learn how to heal it and forgive it within yourself. And that's what gives light to it. And so that's why I'm open about it, is to give people permission that, look, you don't have to hate yourself for being imperfect. And I'm no better than you just because there might be times when I navigate things, what other people might classify as better. It doesn't make me better. I just made the choice to learn how to go there. You can do it too. But
Yes.
I still have moments here and both are the same. Neither one is better than the other. They're both okay.
Yeah. That's so good. I know you talk a lot about reliving your worst day. So can we elaborate on that and unpack that concept?
That's what I call the worst day cycle. There are two things I discovered: the worst day cycle and the authentic self cycle. The worst day cycle I wrote about in my first book. And this is why we all victimize ourselves. And this is why you asked earlier about pain. Consists of four things. Trauma, we all go through childhood trauma. It's unavoidable. When we experience trauma, it creates the experience of fear. All right. Fear is an emotional chemical addiction that gets stuck in our brain and body. And it becomes how we learn to navigate our life. That fear, that emotional condition creates shame, less than. We lose attachment to our authentic value and worth. And shame is really diabolical. We've lost when we're in shame, we've lost because we're out of touch with our inherent value and worth, we've lost touch with our inherent power. Because we couldn't stop our parents and caregivers from being perfectly imperfect, from hurting us. And so the way we get our power back as an adult is we choose people, places, and things to destroy ourselves to get our power back. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true for all of us. You pick that terrible person and career and everything because what you're trying to do is show yourself how your parents hurt you and how you need to heal it. But what happens is, because society doesn't teach us, but also we had to learn this in childhood, we weren't emotionally developed. Since we don't have the emotional skills, we all go into denial and self-deception, go, nope, that's not it. Wasn't them. It's not my fault. It's them. They did this to me. I didn't choose that person. I didn't deserve this. And boom, we start the cycle all over again. We're going to pick another person and relive the trauma, fear, shame, and denial. We do that over and over in every area of our life. That's why we need pain. We keep reliving it. Well, that's why the authentic self cycle, we have to get into truth. Oh my God. And let me prove it to people that you're all living your life this way and why everybody on the planet is a mess. You can ask yourself three simple questions. What am I feeling? Most people don't even know what they're feeling. You can grab a feelings wheel off my website, track your feelings, whatever they are, sad, angry, scared, whatever. Ask yourself, where in my body do I feel it? This ties into the illness and disease aspect because we store all emotional trauma in our body. Then ask yourself, what's my first memory? So think of those people listening, bring up whatever your last negative experience was, whatever that feeling was, where in your body. Now, what's your first memory? Most people will remember something within the last couple of weeks. Great, write it down. Then ask yourself, what's your memory before that? Somewhere 2 to 5 years, write it down. Keep going back. Eventually, you're going to arrive at, oh my God, I was 4 years old. Mom or dad said or did this. Or you may not remember the specific event, but you'll remember, I don't know what happened, but it feels like I was about 7. Well, do you see what I just proved to you? You've been reliving that destructive emotion against yourself since childhood. There's your worst day cycle. And we all have thousands of them because that's how emotions work. They are learned in childhood. So whenever we're an adult, we have an emotion, all we're ever doing is reliving childhood, ever. We're not even present. Every adult emotion was learned in childhood, and it's a window into how we can heal ourselves from that pain, stop the worst day cycle, get into truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. Obviously, the whole healing process is much more complex. I can't fit it in, but there's the proof that every person on this planet is perfectly imperfect. We're all a train wreck. Who cares about our stories? What's it matter? Like, why can't we just embrace it, start talking about it, and start dealing with it? And if you want to end pain, that's how you do it.
And you have so many resources available to people. So can you walk us through what is available?
Sure.
And if some people just want to read the book, or maybe some
Sure.
people want to enroll in private coaching.
Yeah. What I've discovered is there are people at different stages in the journey. There are those who may have just heard this for the first time and it's a bit overwhelming. Then I'd say go to my YouTube channel, watch my videos, go to my website, kennyweiss.net. There's a bunch of free downloads under the resource section. Just take advantage of all the free stuff. All right. Once you get comfortable with that and start to see how, oh my God, this is true, then the next step would be pick up my books. The first one, I read them in this order. Your Journey to Success is the first book. And then my most recent book is Your Journey to Being Yourself. You can find those on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There are links on my website. Go to the books. Once you're finished with that, if you're ready to do more, then my online classes, my Greatness University. This is where you will learn the emotional authenticity process from beginning to end, how you can start discovering your worst day cycles and then learning how to reorient the emotions, because right now they're working against you. It teaches you how to get them to work for you, which is the process, my life story taught me how to do. What I didn't realize as I was living this out, I was always writing things down and everything. I never knew I was developing all this stuff as I was living it all out. Well, I've laid it out. Here's exactly how I did it. And I walk you step by step. Now, for those that are more, hey, I've done a lot of work, all this makes sense, I'm ready. Well, that's my personal coaching, and you can, get links directly on my website for that. And because there's only so much you can learn from videos, books, and classes. We all need an outside reference. We're too close to ourselves. We won't see the way we're in denial and self-deception and how we're hiding from ourselves. So we need someone who's lived the journey, who can see it and help us learn how to see it in ourselves. And that's my job, is to teach you how to be me for yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's very helpful. And if you look back at your life, so it sounds like at age 38, you stepped into a new phase of adulthood. As far as fulfillment, of course, yes, every period had something valuable and precious, and you had some happy or challenging moments. But when did you start feeling, or did you arrive? Hopefully, you are there, where you're in the alignment with the work that you're doing that gives you satisfaction,
Yeah.
where it feels right.
Yeah. That was after my second divorce. That was, I can't remember. Let's see, it would be 2014. So 48, 49. That's when I got to the other side. And that's, when I realized this is my career. The last 10, 11 years have been very peaceful. Now I've learned enough to know I may not be done. Like, it's quite possible I could wake up tomorrow and go, oh my God, I am so full of it. I was not meant to be a coach. I was not meant, all that stuff is wrong. This is like, I know how the journey works now. And so I'm totally open to the possibility that I'm in complete deception, and some event's going to happen and I'm going to have a whole new awakening to something else. I'm not afraid of that. I actually look forward to it, because that's all I care about. Is I just want to confront myself, because I know every time I do, I get more and more peace and contentment. So I'm no longer afraid of it. Now, it's quite possible the rest of my life will be quiet as it is now. I'm okay if that happens, but I'm also okay if it blows up again, because it'll just take me to the next level. And that's the joy pain. You no longer, you see pain as joy. It's just an opportunity. So I'm no longer afraid of it. But, based on my life experience so far, the last 10 of 11 years have been pretty quiet, pretty peaceful and content, and sound like the words you used. Who knows? Maybe there's a deeper level. I'm open to that possibility, and we'll see if that comes up or not.
Oh, that was such an inspirational conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you doing this work and helping parents out. It takes a lot of courage to
Thank you.
be such a resource for them.